I think we can get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining. My name is Arash Asher. I'm one of the cancer rehabilitation physicians here at Cedars Sinai, and we are really happy to have you as part of our Wellness, Resilience, and Survivorship seminar series. If this is your first time joining, we do this about once a quarter as a way of trying to stay connected with our community and also to take a little bit of a deeper dive in some topic that we believe relates to our wellness or cancer survivorship, something that might have to do with improving quality of life and resilience after a cancer diagnosis. Today, our topic is going to be, does nature nurture? And thinking about the impact of exercise on our well-being. We have a really great panel. I first want to introduce our co-moderator, Ben McLaurin, who's also serving as our coordinator he's the most popular guy here, so you probably all know him already. If you haven't, you should know him. He oversees, coordinates, organizes our Wellness and Resilience Survivorship program. So Ben, welcome. And you're on mute.
Thank you, Dr. Asher. Sorry about that. Very happy to be here. Greetings, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Okay, and I just briefly want to introduce our panel members and we'll get started in a moment. So first and foremost, I want to introduce Dr. Celina Shirazipour. She is an assistant professor at Cedars Sinai Medical Center. She's also a research consultant for the Invictus Games Foundation and a board member of the City Parks Alliance. Her research focuses on promoting physical and mental health for individuals with physical and mental illness and injury, with a particular emphasis on physical activity and participation. And I just want to say at the onset, Celina, number one, welcome. And two, it's really been so valuable for me to have your partnership in our various research programs and projects. So thank you for joining.
Thank you, and it's been an honor working with you. It's hard to believe it's been almost 4 years that I've been at Cedars now, but thank you for these opportunities.
Also, we have Jessica Capaldi joining us. She is a clinical research coordinator at Cedars Sinai Medical Center. She's also an MSTP Boost Scholar at Stanford University School of Medicine and a Teach for America alumni. Her research focuses on promoting physical and mental health for cancer survivors, with a particular emphasis on pediatric and adolescent and young adult survivors' physical activity participation. Welcome, Jessica Capaldi.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Carolina Rains. She is a certified exercise physiologist and cancer exercise trainer at the Research Center's Cancer Center for Health Equity. Before becoming an exercise physiologist, she had an MD degree that she earned in Columbia, where she practiced general internal medicine for several years. Her research interests include projects to promote exercise in the cancer population and as an intervention tool in the prevention and adjuvant treatment of clinical conditions such as cancer. Carolina, welcome.
Thank you.
Lastly, we have Tomas Wagmister, is a licensed clinical social worker at Cedars Sinai Cancer Center. Clinical interests include mindfulness-based treatments and the therapeutic potential of nature, food, and exercise in trauma healing. Welcome, Tomas.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
Okay, and before we start chatting, I believe we also have two participants of our exercise program. I'm sorry, I can't see everyone on the screen. So if you're here, I wanted to also recognize Grace Variola, who volunteered to join our panel discussion. So Grace, if you're there, hello and welcome. And also Monica Mosinajad also is a participant in our nature study, and I wanted to recognize and thank her for joining as well. Okay, so before we kind of dive in and before Ben and I start asking our panelists a number of questions, I think it might help just to tell a little bit more of a personal story and how we kind of got started on our study and the subsequent programs that we believe will ensue. So this is my own personal story. So many people here might know that for over 10 years, I would literally walk home from work. I was fortunate to not have to sit in rush hour traffic for an hour, and I would walk through, if you know the West LA area, I'd walk through La Cienega and 3rd Street and San Vicente, and it was a nice walk. It was always a chance for me to kind of process the day and kind of reflect on things. And it was some exercise. And then I remembered over time, on the weekends, I would go hiking and walk at a similar pace and a similar intensity and generally a similar duration. But I remember feeling, quite differently when I would finish a walk in a green space compared to when I was in the middle of traffic by 3rd Street in La Cienega. And so I remember I started to look into this, and I realized, of course, I was not the first person, of course, to realize that there actually may be a differential in terms of some of the subjective and biological experiences that we may be experiencing when we walk in a very urban area compared to a green area. And that kind of led to a scientific question. We've been running our exercise program here for over 10 years. And I think a logical question that came up for us is, if we were to compare an identical exercise program, let's say in a gym, and compared that same exercise intervention in a green space, we expect the benefits to be the same or different. And the reality was there's very little research in the cancer survivorship arena looking at that question. And it was just a question in my mind for a long time until Dr. Shirazipour came along and brought her expertise in clinical research design and started this study. So Celina, I'm gonna pick on you first. Do you mind, and maybe we could watch a clip that I see she's here, Diane very kindly and generously created for us, giving a little background on the study, why we're doing it, how it's designed, and maybe we can watch a clip after that.
Sounds great, thank you. Yes, so when we were speaking, I was also someone who enjoyed walking to and from work as a way to calm down and prepare for my day. And had also seen in some of my research with military personnel the benefits of nature following disability and post-traumatic stress. And so it was great when these two perspectives came together. And so we came to an area that I know is very dear to Dr. Asher's heart, and that I, as someone new to LA, had started to explore, which is Franklin Canyon. And for people that aren't familiar with Franklin Canyon, it's over 600 acres right behind Beverly Hills of a nature reserve. And part of me thinks we should have chosen a different spot because it's a nice, quiet, peaceful area. And the last thing we want is for it to turn into Runyon. But it is a very, very peaceful spot where you really don't see cars and you don't really know you're in a city. And so what we've created as a study is we have currently breast cancer survivors, and soon we'll have adolescent and young adult cancer survivors who walk with Carolina and Jessica 3 times a week in the morning in Franklin Canyon in small groups. And they all wear Fitbits, and we aim to achieve kind of a moderate intensity walk based on individual heart rates. And they do that for 3 months. And then before the study and at the end of the study, we do a series of surveys to look at if there are improvements in personal well-being and social support and some of the functional outcomes like fatigue that we'd want to see improvements in after treatment. But we also, very excitingly, are doing some deeper data collection, which hasn't been done yet in terms of nature, looking at the influence on biologic aging. So understand some of the impact of treatment on things like accelerated aging. We collect blood work, and we're looking at things like whether there are changes and improvements in aging genes. So we're really excited about this study. I know everyone's really enjoyed it so far. And so I'm going to pass it on to Jessica and Carolina to share the video and kind of orient you to the walk itself.
So we begin the walks with the dynamic warm-up. We do some deep breathing here, and we stretch out to make sure that we're ready to go. The walk has a little bit of incline. We want to make sure everybody's, warmed up and feeling good. And the canyon has, a wonderful sunny place to help us warm up.
And here is the group walking, and we usually walk for about 40 minutes going up the hill, and as Celina mentioned, measuring their heart rate to make sure that there is some intensity in the walk.
We also do a cool down at the end where we stretch, and it's really similar to the stretches that you're seeing here as well.
I just want to echo what Dr. Shirazipour already mentioned, which is we don't want the word to get out about this place. So please let this, I don't know how many people there are on this call, but hopefully nobody else outside of this Zoom call will discover this place. But I guess if I could start with the first question for anyone of our trainers. I know it's early in the study, we don't have formal data yet, but have you noticed any impact in just subjectively? How are people feeling being outdoors? I remember reading that, recently, that I think it's the average American spends 22 to 23 hours a day inside, which I could imagine is just a huge shift from probably where things were a generation or two ago. Is spending more time outside making a difference from what you see?
Yes, one of the things I notice is a lot of the participants feel like this is like a safe place where they can talk about different things in relation to their disease or, any kind of problems that sometimes they don't feel that they can share with family members, because even though they feel the support of the family members, they don't understand exactly what they're going through. So some participants have expressed that one of the things they like about the walks is that they can share those feelings and feel understood.
And you're on mute.
And Carolina, is there such a thing as PTSD from having, not being at the cancer center as opposed to, and being outdoors and being able to be in nature? Is that an aspect of this as well?
Well, some participants have been diagnosed PTSD, and they have told me that the walks have been really helpful in that aspect. So yeah.
I think when you bring up a good point in the sense that our current exercise program, for those of you that may have participated, is in our gym in the hospital. And for some, it's not a problem to come back to where they had all their treatment. I know for others, just driving towards 8700 Beverly and going through the elevator and the check-in process brings back a lot of those feelings. So having a different place to kind of go to, I think for some can make a big difference. I see, I believe Monica's here. So hi, Monica. Do you mind? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you've been participating. Do you mind giving any of your kind of honest feedback on what you think it's done, or for you in terms of your health and your well-being so far?
First of all, I'm very appreciative for this program, and I think it's wonderful. We all know that there is research that shows for reoccurrence, exercise helps. For me, there is especially a moment towards the end of the walk when we're stretching. We have to sit down on the bench and stretch our leg. And when you sit down at that area, it's all green, it's all trees, and you breathe in, it's like meditation. It's beautiful. Absolutely, the walks help. Absolutely, there is the exercise. There is a bond with other people, sharing what I went through and different aspects of what they went through. So it helps to talk. But the place, it's so beautiful and tranquil. And I know you said don't spread the word, but I had to show my husband where we do it, the walks, because it's so beautiful. And we came and we drove through the area, and the one thing that he kept saying, how beautiful this hiking trail and the whole trees. And so for me, nature helps a lot. We do a little survey every Friday, and the survey is about exercise. It's about our feelings, emotion. And Dr. Usher, I can tell you, on the days that I'm walking, I'm in such better mood versus days that we're not meeting, we're not walking. And I made a joke to Carolina and Jessica, and I said, you should have this survey also on days that we do not walk, just to see the difference. So yes, absolutely, very appreciative. I think it's a wonderful program, and I hope it goes on.
Dr. Asher, if I could speak briefly.
Please go ahead.
At the Patient and Family Support Program here in the Cancer Center, we do run a multitude of support groups, of peer support groups that still are being run over Zoom for the most part. It's amazing to think about the synergy happening between that kind of mutual support along with the exercise and the experience of a nature-based environment all coming together in the healing process, and how those things are reinforcing each other in this shared healing that they're having.
Thank you so much. I think I want to piggyback on what Monica said, and believe me, I hope we don't take this the wrong way. I love hearing that people are feeling better, that their moods might be enhanced, that they're feeling more calm and maybe having less symptoms of anxiety. But I just want to maybe view the world through the lens of an oncologist or let's say a more basic scientist. And they may say, it's nice that people are feeling better, but what objective evidence, do we really have that we're making a difference? And I know Dr. Shirazipour alluded to this, but I want to just parse out a couple of points that she made. So people who are in the study, we're actually measuring something called like DNA methylation and inflammatory cytokines. And so these are objective markers that are important to oncologists. There's a belief that cytokines possibly may be associated with a higher rate of recurrence. It's been well known for a while that DNA methylation may have to do with accelerated aging. And however important it is that we are feeling better, if there was evidence shown that we're actually changing our biology, that's where I think this can make a huge difference, not just for us in this room, but I want to go back to Dr. Shirazipour for thinking about our society as large. So Celina, I know you're involved with the park system and thinking about health on a larger scale. Do you have any ideas about the implications of something like this, and how would we actually take a study like this, if it were positive, and actually make a difference in our community?
Yeah, it's really interesting because we're on the cusp of this discussion in a lot of different realms. In some countries, we actually see doctors being able to write prescriptions to spend time in nature as part of the healing process or the recovery process. And there are prescriptions pads, and these are also currently being tested in the US. And we do see, for example, large advocacy organizations for parks really focusing on these health benefits of nature, especially now when a lot of people during COVID-19, that was their outside time. That was their opportunity to be active with all the gyms being closed. And I know here in LA, a lot of people mentioned the trails were packed. It was busy because people were starting to realize the benefits of going outside. So what we'll really see if based on these findings is, I think, a lot of the research that's been done has been done in the general population. But I think if we're able to show that it not just benefits, generally our community, but it also can actually help heal our communities and people that need support, that's going to be a big push, hopefully towards, and I know for certain organizations, the hope is towards more funds to support our parks, create more park space, green space in diverse areas, not just in certain communities, in order to promote greater access. I do know that though that there's the conflicting argument of people that are worried about medicalizing our nature space, that they still want it to be a place that people come to because they enjoy it, not just because they're told to. So I think it's that interesting fine line, which is something we talk a lot about, which is you're getting the exercise and the health benefits as kind of this added benefit of the fact that we're all joining outside. So it's kind of this excuse, but the reason you're there is because you're enjoying it. So there are a lot of different factors at play, but studies like this will really play into supporting the need for increased funding of park space across the city, and a need to protect our nature reserves.
Well, I know Carolina mentioned, for example, on some level there's a psychological benefit. We can talk to others. We're not isolated. But even if we, and I imagine that's an important part of this process, but even if we eliminated that one component, do any of you have any ideas or suggestions on why? Let me just read you what I read earlier. I mean, there's research, and this is incredible. There's various levels of research that spending time in nature lowers blood pressure, improves birth outcomes, helps congestive heart failure, reduces obesity, improves immune function, helps with asthma, reduce mortality. I mean, these are major, suggestions from the research. Why in the world would being in a park change our immune function?
Yeah. I think that's a big question. I think each of us will probably, based on our area of expertise, have different perspectives. One thing I think we're seeing in our study that we've also seen, for example, in populations with disabilities, is it's the break. We're always kind of going really fast. We're always connected. Our bodies are probably in a constant state of stress. And, when we're in Franklin Canyon, the phone reception isn't working. You are completely focused on yourself, on the green space, on your experience. And I think from my training in psychology, that would be the benefit of just time to focus, to just get back to basics and to regenerate away from the day-to-day noise. But I'm sure Tomas or Carolina or Ben might have other perspectives, or Jessica.
Well, to add to what Celina said, actually, and this just happened last week or 2 weeks ago, I had one of the participants came and she was really stressed. I think she had an argument, something had happened to her, and she almost doesn't come to the walk. And I was like, don't worry about it. We're just going to walk. You're going to feel better. The problems is going to be there after we finish, but your perspective about the problem is going to be different, and you're going to feel different. She looked at me kind of like, okay, whatever. But we did the walk and we finished the cool down, and I asked her, so how do you feel now? And she was like, you were so right. I feel so much better. I'm ready to, to go back to the world and face the problem. So somehow it happens.
It seems like there's such an open opportunity to explore healing in any kind of way, whether that it's distraction by the plants and the flowers, whether it's in conversation with your peers, whether it's through quiet reflection that you're having. There's just so many different avenues to experience what healing is, what sharing is, what is distraction, whatever works for you in that space.
As many of you know, I'm as well as working at Cedars, I am a cancer survivor myself. And I remember for me, when I was going through treatment and post-treatment and recovery, that it seemed that just walking in a park was so accessible. If I thought about exercise as having to go to a gym or something more formalized, gosh, that just seemed just too big of an ask for me at that point. But being able to just go to a park and just go for a walk, boy, that seemed so tranquil and so, easy. And really for me, that was the beginning of me getting back to my new normal.
I just want to give another angle. And again, I don't think anyone knows exactly why this mechanism may work, but there are some interesting theories about, for example, our microbiome may be changing. So when we touch, the leaves or grass or the soil, and of course, as many people are aware, the microbiome seems to be connected to virtually every health outcome these days, that possibly just being outdoors and being exposed to this different environmental situation, environment may be changing our biology. And air quality, the other theory is that maybe we're just having improved air quality in a green space compared to where I was walking on La Cienega Boulevard or 3rd Street. So that might, and so Dr. Shirazipour, you're still measuring, the air quality at that space to kind of control for that factor to the degree that we can. Is that right?
Yeah, Carolina wakes up early every morning before the walks and looks at the indicators in terms of the air quality and the heat, the weather of what's going to be happening that morning. I think especially in a place like LA, that's the big question. We don't want to be harming our participants, and we want to make sure it's a hospitable environment. I think the really funny thing right now is that the only walks we've had to cancel has been for rain, which makes me laugh for an LA study that's been our only reason for cancellation. Air quality's been good. Knock wood, and the heat has been okay so far. But yeah, we measure that every day. And we do have plans as this study develops. I know, Dr. Asher, you found that there are these portable machines that allow us to measure in the space as we're walking the air quality. And I know that's in our future plans as the study moves forward.
We do have a little device that I don't walk with it, but every time I get to the place, I just click on it to make sure that the quality in there is also correct.
I may pose another. Whether it's Franklin Canyon or at a national park or out in the woods somewhere, and especially if it's been a couple of days. So if I'm lucky to be in a situation where it's not just 2 hours, but you have some continuity, at some point you start, and again, at least for me, where you feel kind of connected in a way that you may not be when I'm, at work or connected to the phone and the internet all the time. So I guess I'm kind of dabbling into that spiritual connection, or however each person may want to describe it. Did you observe anything in that spiritual connectedness when you're out in nature? I know it's silence because that's a harder one. But I know many people talk about this idea of being in flow or being in a state of awe, and awe, and hopefully we're going to have an entire session on the value of having moments of awe in terms of resilience. But for me, being out in a national park or in a green space elicits those moments, and I'm curious whether Jessica, Carolina, others had any observations in that space.
I can't speak specifically to participants feeling spiritual per se, but I can speak to moments of awe. Like, for example, just the other day we saw a gorgeous brown hawk that, you know, made everybody stop in their tracks and observe, and really, like, just, it was a moment of awe. Or lately there have been more blossoms, and that's been stopping people in their tracks to admire a blossom or to smell it, to note it. And then each day when we walk past it, check to see if there are more or less, and if the leaves or fruits have replaced them. So I think, like, in those moments, there are moments of awe, and I would say that like those observations of just the natural, you know, landscape around us.
I will say it's always fun for me because Jessica or Carolina or one of our team will send me pictures from the walk, and like one day they'll send me a picture of a cloud that's like in a specific formation or flowers, and it's obviously clear that the benefits haven't just been for the participants but also for our team.
One thing that I think is really nice, not just on our walks, but all to be outside in nature, is that you are very present. You're not, you're not thinking about anything else. It's not the future, it's not the past, it's not what's going to happen with whatever. It's you're just present in what you're doing. And I think that's really healing, because there's nothing else at that moment that you are doing but just that. And I think that's something that I really like when I'm out in nature.
Just piggyback on that and what Jessica mentioned earlier too, being out in nature and just being in awe of the complexity of the natural world, as well as to help take one out of what we define as important for ourselves as individuals in the urban landscape. And just having that exposure as really helping still the mind and the spirit, and enjoying that awe of that amazing natural world.
What counts as green space? Does it have to be green? I mean, it's not green, right? A lot of time in the summer in Los Angeles. Does the desert count? Does the beach count? Does it have to be a forest?
I think it's anything outdoors. Anything outdoors. It can be you sailing in the water. You know, it can be like the desert. I think anything that has been created for, if you believe in God, or in, that is just, it was here on earth and not built by humans. I think that's green space.
I think that's a great question too, especially when we have a huge urban landscape with limited green spaces. And so what kind of micro parks or green spaces can be created within the urban landscape that would allow access to that kind of space?
Yeah, we do a lot of studies with the City of LA Department of Recreation and Parks, and some of what they highlight is that, there are a lot of areas of the city where there might not necessarily be access to a nature reserve or a big city park. So there they rely on pocket parks, those kind of small half block of green spaces, or community gardens that might be providing some access or components of nature. In terms of the larger question, I know my team is really sick of me saying I want us to run a blue space study with the ocean. I think we're really lucky here in Los Angeles that we have such diversity in our space, and it would be interesting long term to look at the differences of, forest, nature reserve Franklin Canyon versus, you know, being in an ocean based landscape. And especially because for us, I mean, I remember thinking this when I was doing my running over the summer. I mean, when you're running on the paths along the beach, you're running next to the PCH, not necessarily the healthiest environment to be exercising in, but it would be interesting to explore the different opportunities that LA nature provides and which might be most healing based on specific outcomes. Maybe it's that forests might be beneficial from the microbiome perspective of interacting with plants versus a horizon of the ocean for mental well-being. It could be interesting to explore.
Dr. Shirazipour.
Oh, go ahead, Ben, please.
I was just going to ask Dr. Shirazipour if would it be as effective if a person wasn't able to get to, let's say, a park or a beach or an outdoor, you know, where there's beautiful greenery, but able to walk around the block? Is that as effective as long as they're outdoors?
So I see Dr. Asher smiling because that was an original iteration of this study, was gym versus walking on La Cienega, like him and I did going to and from work versus Franklin Canyon. So I think, you know, it's basic benefits of physical activity that we know exist versus potential additive benefits of nature or potential harmful benefits of traffic. So I think there's a lot for us to explore. And I know probably Dr. Asher has some perspectives there.
I think it's a valid question because, you know, when we're walking outside, you know, we all see people jogging and riding their bikes on Santa Monica Boulevard, Wilshire Boulevard, you know, these busy, congested areas. Are they getting the same benefits? And until we really put it to the test, I don't think we could definitively answer that question. One of the reasons we shied away, because as Dr. Shirazipour mentioned, the original idea was to actually walk up and down La Cienega and have the other half of the group walk around Franklin Canyon. Now, one, I don't think I could convince most of our patients to walk up and down La Cienega. I thought we'd have a hard time recruiting. But two, there was this interesting study from just a couple of years ago in London where they had individuals either walk down Oxford Street, which if you've been there, right? I mean, it's full of taxi cars and pollution. And the other group was walking in Hyde Park, right? So a little bit of an oasis in the middle of London. And it was really amazing. The cardiovascular pulmonary benefits of exercise were eliminated in the group that walked on Oxford Street. And so it gave us pause to that, you know, if we believe the idea that we don't want to do any harm, that we may not want to embark on that kind of a study. So that's one piece. The other question I just wanted to ask, and I don't expect anyone to have an easy answer, but you may be aware, of course, that right, virtuality is the rage now, right? Would putting on a set of goggles and go into Yosemite be as good as being in Yosemite itself? Maybe we should do that study.
I think we should do that study. I will say I recently visited a friend that lives in rural Arkansas, and we got out of the car and I breathed in the air and I'm like, oh, this is fresh air. And so I feel like there are benefits of virtual reality. Potentially, it would be interesting to look at because there's the visual aspect of immersion, but all the other pieces that we connect with nature of fresh air, of the tactile aspects would be interesting to measure in terms of a difference. Because there are things you don't realize you're missing until you're actually in the space itself.
As we're working through a few final questions, if anybody from the audience has any questions that they want, if you want to raise your hand virtually or put in the chat, please do. I want to just see if one more time if Grace's audio is working, because I know she kindly joined. Grace, if it is working, we'd love to hear your impressions from the study, and if not, maybe we'll be able to connect next time.
While we're waiting to see, I just had a quick question. Is there a certain amount of time that is more beneficial?
I don't think anyone knows, again, in terms of how much time. Again, the most recent survey I read was 22 hours per day indoors, something like up to 16 hours a day on screens for teenagers. So I think even 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes can make a difference from the bits I've read from the literature from the last few years.
Yeah, and on that, like some of the studies we were reviewing when we were developing the study, a lot of it's just looked at singular bouts outside. So the impact of, an hour or a few hours. What we really like about this study is the ability to look at the sustained impact over weeks. So I think hopefully that's an answer we'll be able to address.
Unfortunately, Grace is having some technical challenges. But Grace, maybe we'll collect your thoughts through the chat if you have access to a keyboard. I'd love to welcome any questions, comments, personal experiences from anyone from the group. And does anybody have any wisdom they could impart as we're trying to design future studies, programs, and the like? And as you're thinking through that, I do want to come back to an idea that Ben alluded to and something we actually talked about briefly yesterday. And Tomas, I want to pick on you. We did talk about this issue of access, right? And we're lucky, in the back doors behind Beverly Hills to have this beautiful park. And are there things that we can think about doing to promote better access so that, everyone has access to the great outdoors? And again, I don't have any easy solutions, but it's certainly something we struggle with.
I think inequality and really the disparities that exist with wealth and access really has huge impacts for people's ability to engage. There is no easy fix, but I appreciate being able to at least apply that lens to the issue and just help it better inform how we come up with solutions to make sure that the way we do design our access don't discriminate through lack of awareness of the difficulties that certain populations may have in terms of accessing natural spaces.
And we are seeing, to what Tomas mentioned, a lot of grassroots movements trying to address that in the absence of municipal solutions. So for example, in different cities across the countries, the Black community is coming together for Get Outside Days. And here in Los Angeles, there's a big culture building in the surfing community to provide access to people of color to the ocean and to surfing lessons. And then in Franklin Canyon, where we run our sessions, the rangers actually have schools come from different areas of Los Angeles to teach them about nature. So not long-term solutions, more about primary exposure, but hopefully by people like Tomas mentioned, understanding the issues, we can develop long-term solutions.
Also noticed a couple hands. Patricia, I think I saw your hand, and then after that, Maria. Did you have a question, Patricia, or comment?
Are you speaking to me, Patricia?
Oh, I forgot which one. So whoever has a comment, please feel free to unmute. And
I'm going to comment in the chat. I don't know if you're checking the chat, but
go ahead.
When you were talking about what constitute a green space, I was wondering if the idea of vista has something to do with it. Being able to see a horizon or an opening in the space, or if it's just okay to be in your own backyard if it's green.
A great point. I could tell you, and I don't have an exact answer. There's a certain number of conditions that have higher evidence for really having a meaningful impact from being outdoors. One of them is actually myopia, right? Mm-hmm. So and to your point, Patricia, I think the idea that we're not always on a screen and we're able to look out at farther distances is one of the reasons why being outside may be, healthy for our eyes, among all the other psychological benefits that we're talking about. So I appreciate you bringing that point up. Thank you. Who was next? Patricia and then Christy.
Yes, so I ditto, thank you. The program is awesome. So I have been on this thing called earthing or grounding. So it is when your feet are absolutely, or your body is absolutely touching the earth somehow, we'll believe, as opposed to just being out in nature and wearing our rubber-soled shoes. So I just wanted to ask if you guys had considered that as part of it, or if in the future you want to test that out. I'm your gal. So anyhow, thank you very much.
I don't know if we have any lawyers on the call. I'm worried that somebody's going to have a scrape and I'll get in big trouble, but I would love to do that because, number one, as a rehab person, we know walking barefoot improves your gait mechanics and helps prevent things like plantar fasciitis. But I also, again, it's just a theory, but the microbiome theory, I imagine, would be really working through exactly what you're talking about. So
I'm all over that.
The lawyers will let us do that, but that will be for another time. Thank you so much.
You'll figure it out. Come on. Okay. Thank you. I'm gotta go.
Hi, Dr. Asher. Hi, everyone. My name's Christy. I participated in this study. I'm so thankful for this presentation. I just wanted to share that this study positively changed my life. It was so impactful and so meaningful to me during a very difficult part of my life. Jessica and Celina and Carolina and everyone involved, it's really instrumental in how I carried myself through cancer and really thrived, took a part of my life that I was experiencing some personal tragedy, and there's something about walking and talking and being in a supportive group where you feel seen and heard and understood. And the women provided that. It was really so breathtaking, I think, to do that in a natural environment where I feel connected to nature, where nature, I get outside of myself. And then through the healing and the walking and the talking that was fostered in the safe container and the group of women sharing their stories, being in nature, I get outside of myself and I connect to something so much larger. And I've been, trying to deeply listen to everyone's conversations about nature and being in nature and that healing effect. And for me, there's a felt sense about being in nature that is very different than from being in an urban city landscape for me. And then the connection, is spiritual as well. But I found so much healing in the nature study because the women, they showed up, they had purpose and meaning. They were there for me. And I think the study, it's like a pillar to the community, what what was provided for me in this pilot study. I'm just so grateful. And it was so innovative, all of the work that you're doing at Cedars, because I was also enrolled simultaneously in the Dr. Asher's GRACE program and HAYS program. So to be able to reflect on those principles and that deep learning in a group of people where we could have conversations about it and really take the material and integrate it in our lives in these settings that really fostered like deep sharing and like true, real authenticity. I'm just so incredibly thankful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Phenomenal.
much for your insights. And again, we have a great team and we're lucky to have that. And I'm just taking a look at the time. I know we're at the last moment or two. I wanted to take a moment and thank you all for joining. I want to thank all our panelists for a nice discussion. I know Dr. Shirazipour, we're still recruiting. So if you happen to be in touch with a breast cancer survivor who might qualify, feel free to contact myself or anybody from our team. We look forward to hopefully seeing you all for our next seminar in a couple of months. And again, thank you all so much for joining. I hope if nothing else, today just served us as a little bit of a reminder to try to take a few minutes and spend some time outdoors. So enjoy the beautiful weather. I know it might rain tomorrow, but this weekend should be nice. And again, thank you all so much for joining.